I think Ben asked the question. Let's see.
Awesome.
Hi there, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Tonight we're lucky to have with us author Ed Lin, who's going to be in conversation with Naomi Hirahara, discussing Ed's new book, David Tung Can't Have a Girlfriend Until He Gets into an Ivy League College. A tongueful, mouthful. We're so grateful that all of you could make it tonight and that our bookstore is able to continue bringing you authors during, this crazy, uncertain time. There is going to be a Q&A portion where you can ask Ed questions, and to do that, go ahead and click the Ask a Question button towards the bottom. And also, if you'd like to purchase Ed's book, you can go ahead and click the green button right down there. But with that all out of the way, let me go ahead and introduce our guest for tonight. Ed Lin, a native New Yorker and Taiwanese and Chinese descendant, is the first author to win 3 Asian American Literary Awards. His books include Waylaid, a mystery trilogy, including the books This Is a Bust, Snakes Can't Run, and One Red Bastard, a Taipei-based mystery titled Ghost Month, and his book Incense and 99 Ways to Die, which is a continuation of the series Ghost Month. David Tung Can't Have a Girlfriend Until He Gets into an Ivy League College is his first young adult novel. And with him, Naomi Hirahara is the Edgar Award-winning author of the Masarai series, also nominated for the Macavity and Anthony Awards. The series includes Summer of the Big Bachi, Gasa Gasa Girl, Snakeskin Shamisen, Blood Hina, Strawberry Yellow, and Sayonara Slam. A graduate of Stanford University, Naomi has also written many books about gardening and Japanese American history and culture, and has also contributed to several anthologies and collaborative books, including Los Angeles Noir, Santa Cruz Noir, and Prospect Park's upcoming hometown, Pasadena. But with that all out of the way, I will go ahead and let them take over. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, guys. Thanks for coming.
Ed and I, we were thinking of having a debate here, but we thought better of it. But I'm so excited about Ed's book, and he's actually going to read to us a section of the book, and I might actually respond to him. So let's see. Take it away, Ed.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to read a section where our protagonist has to tell his mother that he needs help to get a tux for this big school dance. And he had tried to think of ways that he could go to this dance without his mother finding out. But when it came down to the economics of it, there was no way he'd get a nice tux to go. I guess what you should know is that David's family operates a restaurant and where he works at nights and on the weekends. And also Harmony Health is a hospital where he's applied for an internship. Okay, I guess that's all you need to know. My heart was pounding in fear when my mother picked me up as usual at the bus stop. I was full-on terrified to lay out all of my plans in full, which I needed to do to even have a shot at her giving me the tux money. "How was school?" she asked. "Fine," I said. I saw her mouth twitch. She was suspicious when she didn't hear grades. "No tests or quizzes?" "No, nothing today." "What about Harmony Health?" "Still nothing." I couldn't muster the courage to bring up the dance. Once we got to the restaurant, I went into work mode. Every time I thought I was going to get a break for a few minutes, another task presented itself. Soon the night was almost over. We were cleaning up. It was now or never. I'd already decided there was no way I was going to tell my mother about the dance once we got home. She'd said numerous times that when she gets home, she just wants to sleep. Plus, here at the restaurant, there was always the chance I could rally up some backup support from Auntie Tong or my dad. At the very least, my mother would think twice before really lashing into me, if it came to that. My newly found level of social acceptance and the potential for a real-life girlfriend was riding on being able to go to the dance. I could be as cool as Shark Beach High as I was at the Chinese school in Chinatown. But in order for that to happen, I needed to go to Nordstrom. this week. There was no way to put it off any longer. Mom? I said hoarsely. She was stapling receipts near the cash register. Yes? Can you help me rent a tuxedo? Tuxedo? What for? I want to go to a school dance. She put down the stapler and curled her hands into fists. You want to go to a dance? My shoulders involuntarily shrugged out of fear. A girl asked me to go, and I said yes. A girl, said my mother, like a TV detective announcing she'd found the murder weapon. I heard my father moving somewhere behind me, possibly taking shelter. Who's this girl? Christina Tao. My mother flared her nostrils. Is she your secret girlfriend, David? No, I said. I don't have a girlfriend, much less a secret girlfriend. Tao, she said venomously. It sounds like a Cantonese name. My mother sometimes expressed distaste for Cantonese people for no explicable reason. How many times have I told you? You're not allowed to have a girlfriend until college. You better get into an Ivy League school. It was the end of yet another long day of work, but my mother didn't seem tired at all. She was as mad as I've ever seen her. Said that enough times, I said. I looked around for some silent show of support. Auntie Zong's English wasn't great, but she could probably understand what was happening. Yet she was diligently wiping down a tabletop, her head bent. My father suddenly found that something in the kitchen required him. After a brief pause, my mother was on me again. You're not even number 1, are you? She pointed at my nose. All the way down at number 8. You spend too much time thinking about girls. That was a complete lie. It angered me into a fatal mistake, talking back to my mother while she was still fired up. I spent too much time working at this restaurant, I protested. You know how long I work here? How long your father works here? You want to run around with girls while we're spending day and night here, making money so we can live? Oh no, don't let her start talking about money when she's this angry. Okay, look, I said, attempting to calm her down. It's just one dance. It's not a big deal. Christina's parents are Chinese too, and they think it's okay. But there was no calm eye to this storm. They're not your parents, and that's not my child. Why can't you understand? No, you don't understand. A lot of kids are going. Not you, David, my mother thundered. You tell this girl you don't want a girlfriend, and you don't want to talk to her anymore. I already told her I would go, I said. Tell her you can't. You're in school, and school is for learning, not for girls. She closed her lips and wiped her front teeth with her tongue, considering something. Give me your phone, David. What? Give me your phone. I don't want you talking and sexting with this girl. I'm not sexting with her, Mom. Who knows what you're doing? I handed over my phone, and half a second later, it was zipped up in her purse. Nothing ever escaped from there, not even light. Thank you.
You know, at one point, I was going to suggest that I do Reader's Theater with you.
Reader's
and
Theater.
I could be, and I could be the mom. But then I was going, you would read the mom so much better than I would. So forget that. But I loved your book, and I could relate to it in so many ways. So I'm going to insert myself into today's program. And I'm going to read a very short, like couple minute section from a short story that was in Literary Pasadena. And it was based on my high school on the West Coast.
Wow.
And it's called The White Tuxedo.
Oh my gosh.
I had written this maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago, but it was finally published in 2013. Okay, so, and it's a dance situation. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
So I'll just go into it. Oh, hey, Kathy, Terry Nelson called after me. Remember, we're manning the prom ticket booth tomorrow at lunch. Those words rang in my ears. Laura hit me squarely in the ribs as we walked to our circle. I think he likes you, Kathy, Laura whispered. I think that he might ask you to the prom. I was almost afraid to think about it. When I was alone in my bedroom or in the bathtub, I would imagine him leaning over me, his white hair sloping over his forehead, his metallic blue eyes looking at my face. Then he would dip down and press his lips against mine, and I would feel his white shoulders and feel safe. Then I would shake myself and wipe those thoughts away. Why set myself up for something that would probably never be? I didn't go to the last Christmas dance, even though I spent hours putting red and green tissue paper decorations on the walls of the women's club. The prom would be the same way, I told myself. There were plenty of girls, the Soches, tall and thin, pointy noses. Who could blame Terry if you chose one of them? I was thinking all these things going to English class when someone stepped in front of me. I looked up. It was Jack Lau.
Hmm.
Oh, hi, Jack. I guess we might be late to English. Yeah. He walked next to me, moving his notebook from his right hand to his left. I sensed something different about Jack, a tentativeness that got me nervous. We walked silently to class until he suddenly blurted out, "You want to go to the prom with me?" I began walking faster. Please, God, don't do this to me, I thought to myself. I can't, I said out of the corner of my mouth. Why not? Suddenly he seemed more aggressive, as if he were challenging me to give him a new good reason. Are you going with someone else? I thought you were against the prom. It's the money allocation that I object to, said Jack. But if we're going to have it, I'm going. I didn't say anything, hoping that no one would notice that I was walking down the hall with Jack. Well, who's your date? He started again. I didn't say I was going. Jack's pasty face looked especially white, and his eyes twitched nervously. I felt as though I was falling, tumbling in a deep, dark hole with a gigantic, sticky cockroach scrambling after me. You don't want to go with me, he stated. You're getting the picture, I said to myself. Just leave me alone. I have enough things to worry about. Jack kept following. Then who else is going to ask you? He said just as the bell rang. I ran toward the door to English class. Who else, Kathy? He shouted. The end.
Who else, Naomi? Who else?
No. So problems. I want to start off with some audience questions, which are So Ed Benjamin asks, Ed, what inspired your new book, and is the book based on your own experiences or those of friends? Which was one of my questions too.
Oh, well, okay. Anytime you write a book, you put a piece of yourself in it, definitely. And there's a very big slice of me in this book, and how I grew up. David's parents operate a restaurant, which is a pretty intense kind of business. But my family, we had a hotel, and that's 24/7. Like anybody could walk in at any time. So I was either at school or working at the hotel, really, on weekdays and on the weekends. So that part of like enforced kind of duty is a very big part of this book as well as getting into a really good school. My editor Sonia, she's Korean American, and it's funny seeing how there are like different iterations of this Asian diaspora in the U.S. Because she said, early on, she was like, so David has to work at his at the restaurant, and yet his parents also expect him to do really well in school. How's that possible? And I was like, oh, so many, Asian American kids whose families operate businesses are in the same situation. You ever walk into like an Asian business and like, there's a kid standing with their back against the wall who are like this, just kind of zombified because they work there all the time. That was me, and I think about that kid a lot, and that kid has stories too. Let's see, what was the first part of that question?
It was like, was it based on your experience or your friends? Well, okay, let me kind of expand that a little more, because I totally related to your book. Not about, I didn't have to go with my father to his gardening route. My brother was the one who had to do that. But I think the thing about language school, I was kind of curious. Did you have to go to language school? Because I went to Japanese language school on Saturdays. So I could, relate to what you were saying there. So can you talk a little bit about that too?
I did go to Chinese school. I didn't go for very long. I actually wrote an essay about this that's on We Need Diverse Books website. But our Chinese school had like 2 tracks. Like one was like, these are kids who are going to apply themselves on Saturdays and are going to learn Chinese. And the other track was basically like, this is babysitting. Basically, I was on the babysitting track. And, it was like a policy of containment. Like the teacher just had to keep kids from running up and down the hallways. So, I mean, to this day, my Mandarin's terrible. My writing's terrible. I mean, my handwriting in English is terrible. Yeah.
Did they not know how to? Okay, my experience was in language school. They were trying to teach us like we were Japanese people, Japanese children. So they were, and there was no, understanding that, hey, we're Americans. You can't approach language, education in the same way. So we were the worst. We were the worst criminals, and because it didn't count, because there was so much pressure on us, during the week to do well in, school. It's like, this is like not real. So we would, we had all these ways, I would put the Chinese characters, like write them on my, wrists. Or we had like, little notes, so we were terrible.
It doesn't matter if you cheat, right?
And then another thing was, we wanted, I'm 10 years older than you, but we really wanted to, quote, assimilate, and Saturdays, like that's where the white kids were like watching, cartoons. Or they had sleepovers, slumber parties, Friday to Saturday. I could never participate in that. So yeah, I could relate. Can you kind of talk a little bit, like, so he goes to there was 2 Chinese schools in his area, but he goes to a different one. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit just about the geography, I guess, of your story about?
Well, I think a lot of Chinese Americans can relate to, their family being close friends with another family. And then all of a sudden, like, one day you never see them anymore, and they never come over anymore. You never go over their house anymore. There's like some kind of dispute between the parents, and you're not privy to know why. The thing is that David's family, they live in this really upscale kind of town. Well, upscale due to gentrification, where mega mansions are being built from reclaimed brick from old brick factories being demolished. So David lives, even though his family lives in this upscale kind of town, they are kind of at the lower end of the economic strata. And so the woman who runs the local Chinese school got into some dispute with David's mother. So David's mother sends him to Chinese school in Manhattan's Chinatown, where his father has to go Saturdays to buy more supplies for the restaurant anyway. So David and his father ride the train in together, and then they walk down to Chinatown, where they separate as David goes to Chinese school and Mr. Tung goes out to buy groceries for the restaurant. One thing that I wanted the journey into New York from New Jersey is that I wanted to have that kind of quiet relationship between the generations. Like there's something really characteristic of a relationship between a first and a second generation, because the first generation man feels like he's left a big part of his identity when he came to the U.S. He's probably not making the full use of his education and abilities in whatever job he has here, and so he's kind of like a bit demasculated and quiet, and feels like he doesn't have much to say. But meanwhile, like a second generation is like an American, and it's not always easily resolved. Even if David were really good at speaking Mandarin, there would still be a huge divide between him and his father. And so they just kind of ride into the city, and like David lets his dad sleep because his dad is not getting enough rest. So that's one of his dad's quiet periods. And David actually feels closer with the kids at the Chinese school in Chinatown, which is a lot of working class kids. And oddly enough, David's father also has a friend in the city too, the guy who drives the supply truck back into New Jersey with David in the front as well.
Yeah, class is a theme in a lot of your books, which I really appreciate too. It's not Crazy Rich Asians,
Just crazy Asians.
Yeah. Jason Song has a question, and I want to piggyback on it too. What was it like making the transition from crime novels to YA? Were there YA books you read as guideposts, or did you feel like your voice adapted fairly easily to a different genre? I have another follow-up question too, because how was it for you to envision David Tung's high school world? Because his world is different than what you experience as a high school student. So, and just from technology to so many other things. But yeah, if you could answer both of those.
Well, I would say the whole thing about writing mysteries is that the readers want to be tricked a little bit. They want to be presented with parts of a puzzle, and they want to try to figure it out, and they want you to be sort of fair about the clues and the motivations of the characters and stuff. And as far as YA is concerned, I feel like younger readers really want the truth. They want you to be honest and upfront, and if there's anything unknown at that point, it's just a matter of discovery, not a matter of hiding things. I feel like I haven't really, because I'm so immature, it's really easy for me to think about the kind of books that I really wanted to read as a kid. And, I actually did read a lot of mysteries as a kid. I read a whole bunch of Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Three Investigators books. But most of all, I wanted to find out what I was doing, why, the how and why of like me, like this Asian American kid was actually the only Asian American kid in my school system, apart from my cousin. Let's see.
And that's really different than David's world. He's
really
surrounded by Asians.
Unlike David's outcome, which we don't know yet, I got into an Ivy League school. I got into Columbia. And when I went to Columbia, I was like, okay, this is going to be cool because I'm going to meet other Asian Americans. We're going to like fight racism, and it's going to be awesome. But like once I got there, it was like, I felt like there were already big populations from like the special schools in the New York City public system, from the prep schools as well, and from like places like Phillips, Exeter, and everything. So there were already like pools of Asians who already knew each other pretty well, and like kind of had their own cliques and stuff. And I was I was like this dude in plaid. I was like a hillbilly, and these other guys were like dressing in like super nice clothes, wearing all black, and had fake IDs to go to all the cool clubs or whatever. So I kind of took that thing about like kind of being with people who looked like you, but they didn't like you. And I just kind of pulled that back into high school. New Jersey is much different from when I was going to school there. It's northern Jersey is like so Asian. There are towns that are like 70%, 80% Asian, and it's like, if that's the town population, then the high school must be like, 5-10% more Asian. And I was just thinking about how competitive that would be, how in each other's business that these populations would be, like the minute you got home, like every single parent would know like what other grade, whatever kid got. And so the pressure would always be on,
Did you feel a need to interview any high school kids, or you thought that wasn't necessary?
I didn't think it was really necessary because the technology changes, but growing up doesn't, insecurities that you have about yourself, about your friends, about your enemies, they don't really change. I feel like there's a lot of universal kind of things to it,
And we've always been younger, right? We haven't been older, but we've been younger, so we could remember how we were. Yeah.
Yes.
Jason also asked, did you read any YA books?
I read quite a
this.
Oh,
I mean, today, like
today.
when you were writing your book, did you, reference any other books, or did you? I know there's at least a handful of Asian American YA writers. I think there's David Yu, there's Andrew Fukuda. There's more women who write YA than guys, but I don't know if you read any of those books, or again, maybe you didn't feel a need to do that.
No, over the past couple of years, I have read quite a few YA books, including, what was that? What was that book? 13 Reasons Why. 13 Reasons Why.
Jay Asher.
Yeah, and funnily enough, in the Netflix series, my wife, who's an actress, she plays the Asian kid's mom. So there you go. There's actually one scene where the kid is like telling his mom that he feels like he's got depression. He has depression. And she's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. This other girl made you feel that way. You really don't. And like somebody on Twitter like took that clip and like put it out and was like, worst Asian mom ever. And like the thing would viral. I was like, oh my God. Poor Cindy. But I actually did read quite a few YA books. I didn't meet any other Asian American YA authors until about a year ago, though, at the Asian American Literary Review thing in DC. It's going to be a pretty cool thing. It's like a biannual kind of thing, and they were so cool. It was so awesome to meet these other people.
Well, Sarah Chen asks. She says, "We need more Chinese Americans represented in YA. So happy you wrote this. Did this factor into why you wrote this? If not, what motivated you to write YA anyway?"
Oh, well, my agent had been on my case for a number of years to write YA because he said, you're really good at dialogue. You can create these characters that would work well in YA. And I just hadn't really thought about it because I latch on to like writing mysteries, and I'm not like a typical mystery writer. I'm kind of quirky. I kind of have like this sense of humor that turns off a lot of people, frankly. many reviewers actually. But it's just the
There's a
part
lot
where
who like it too. Yeah.
yeah, that's true. But no, like, so he had told me like some of the rules about writing a YA book, and one of the central rules is that the narrator has to be a female, has to be a young woman. And I actually tried writing to that, and I just thought, you know what, I I just have to think about writing to the kid that I was, the kind of book that I wanted to read, maybe the kind of book that I needed to read. And then that was my jumping off point for David Tung, you know. So I basically just wrote the whole thing, and I was like, you know what? Realistically, I mean, this is like a couple of years ago, like 3-4 years ago, you know, like before Crazy Rich Asians, the adaptation was on, it was even on the radar. So I sent a copy to my friend Sun Young, because Kaya had published my first 2 books. And, you know, I feel Sun Young and I go way back. She's one of my oldest friends. And I feel like she's, you know, dead honest. And I was like, is this book crazy? And she wrote back, no, it's great. We want to publish it. So I was like, great. Because you know, just thinking about it, I can't imagine any other editor or any other press handling it. I will also say that Neela Banerjee was the first editor on this book, and she is an awesome part of Kaya.
And it's so beautiful, you know, the whole packaging of the book with illustrations. It's so cool.
Can't
You know,
judge a book by its cover or its
you can
illustration.
this time. You mentioned character. I agree with your agent. You do just like a wonderful job with world building, and it's not a science fiction type world building. It's a world building with all these weird characters or distinctive characters. And I think so that is one of your fortes. So you see it in Waylaid, your first book, the Robert Cho novels, the Night Market mysteries. And so I'm curious, this is more of a craft question. So how do you approach characters? And you have so many of them. So how do they crop up? How do you give birth to them?
Well, okay, for some reason, people love talking to me. They really do. Like, I don't know what it is. They just want to talk to me. So I'm often approached, you know, while I'm minding my own business, usually reading or like on a train or something, and people just want to like talk to me. And I feel like you know, I'm a New Yorker. I'm pretty sharp. I can read a person's character pretty easily. And so I feel like many of the people that I've met or encountered have left impressions with me, and that I can kind of turn that around into things. Like you, I've studied improv, so you know, it's this thing where in improv, the first rule is to always say yes, and to always go, you know, to play the reality of the situation. And that's something I try to do with characters. I've been in a lot of strange situations. You know, back when my family was operating the hotel, we all worked in different shifts, and my shift was like, I guess it was from like 8 or 9 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays to like 2 in the morning. So I would watch all this TV. I would watch like all the SNLs, all the old SNLs with like, you know, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, and then later on Eddie Murphy, Joe Piscopo. um, and I don't know. I just kind of absorbed a lot of that. Oh, and then the crazy people who would come in to our hotel at that time were a whole nother thing. You know, our hotel was on the Jersey Shore, and so the real prime time was the summer months from Memorial Day to Labor Day. That was like the big, the real meat months to make money. But apart from that, we still depended on people staying at the hotel. And the people who stayed, the people who were paying $75 a week for a hotel room with a mini refrigerator and a 2-burner hot plate are really they are not boring people to talk with. And they just loved coming in the office and talking.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I made that connection that maybe, your childhood spent in the hotel and kind of primed you to actually make all these characters. And, and I think there is something about you, Ed, because you don't seem like a judgmental person. You seem more open. So maybe that's why, you encounter these people who want to talk to you.
It's the glasses, isn't it?
Well, so, okay, we got a couple questions here. Benjamin, this was an early question, but I don't think we really answered it. What inspired you in terms of this book, specifically the part about the girlfriend, the dating in high school, and why was that like such a big, I mean, why was that issue so forefront in your mind when you wrote this?
Oh, well, I wasn't allowed to date, a lot of people I know weren't allowed to date or, to go to school dances or anything. I feel like that hasn't changed a lot, because just when I was talking to people, when the book was in the production, in the hopper and everything, they were like, "Oh, I grew up like that too." My parents were really strict with me, and it wasn't strictly just Asians. It was like quite a few people were like that. Oh, I couldn't do that. I kind of think about someone who's growing up like that now. Someone like me now, in the same situation, and maybe they'll come across this book and it'll offer some hope. I'd like to offer hope. I feel like a book should be hopeful. It shouldn't be like, this big spiral down into a void. It should be instructional, at least, in showing you that there is a way through this uncertainty, and this is one way out. Apart from just trying to bear down the hatches, wait out the storm.
I didn't know that was your philosophy, Ed, but I'm with you on that. It goes kind of against our noir counterparts or colleagues,
Well, you pick up you pick up a David Goodis book. It's like, and then they both went down. It's like, oh, that's horrible. I mean, I do read books like that and see movies like that. But for me, I'm a positive person. I want to be remembered as a positive brother, someone who offered a way out. Not that like it's this Pollyannish kind of thing, but that there's always a way through.
Well,
the character may or may not choose that, but that path exists.
Well, we have a noir brother who just put in a question, Scott Kikawa in Honolulu, Hawaii. I love your crime fiction, and I'm sure I'm going to love your YA. Are you considering any other genres?
I don't know. I've tried to not really think about genres. I'm trying to. I really hate being pinned down. I really do. Even the books that I write that are mysteries are still kind of like straddling a couple of things. But I really would love to write a horror book someday, like a horror book. a hopeful horror book. uh, I love horror books. I love being scared. I'm not scared too easily. Like I want to be scared, but doesn't happen too often.
Did you see Shaun of the Dead or Shaun?
Shaun
It's
of
like
the
a
Dead,
horror, yeah, with like
2022.
humor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so maybe you could do that in some way. I had this question. In all your books, you're exploring different kinds of expression of Asian American masculinity. The Chinese boy in Waylaid is dealing with sex in an over-sexualized environment of his family's seedy hotel. And Robert Cho, he's the detective and Vietnam War vet in a macho and racist NYPD of the 1970s. And Jing Na um, runs a food stand in Taipei, and he seems a little bit unlucky in love. And David is seeking to find his place in like 21st century America. And then you have I've met him, a very adorable young son. You're the father of a young son. So what is your take on the Asian American male in 2020? What's the state of the Asian American male?
What's the state? I think it's a state that doesn't have 2 senators to elect. Um, I feel like Asian Americans have definitely reached a critical kind of mass, and with it, Asian men are more visible now than they have been in a long time. East Asian men, I feel like the first flag went up when Jeremy Lin was emerging for the Knicks, and then all of a sudden, the debate, if you identify as Chinese American or Taiwanese American, like that was on front page news, and that was crazy. It was completely crazy, and yet that I feel like that first opened up this window, this new window. Since then, I feel like there have just been a lot of opportunities in a lot of other areas. I mean, we had Andrew Yang up there on the presidential primary debates. But then again, it's also a very individual kind of thing. I would never typify my experience as an Asian man as with someone else's as well. I think about M. Night Shyamalan a lot too. My wife was in one of his movies, so I actually, and I met him, and he was like, "You have to come to set." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yes." And so, like, I hung out with him, marginally, but I feel like here is a guy who's like, he's like doing what he was born to do. This guy was born to make movies, and just kind of reveling in it, and it was just beautiful, because think about how long Asian men in this country haven't been able to realize their potential. There are a lot more Mr. Tongues than M. Night Shyamalan's around, but I feel like there's only going to be more. I mean, what Ed Lin thinks about Asian American masculinity is one thing. It's just like one slice in this whole anthology of what other people think. Some people might think it really sucks. Maybe it does, but for
Did
them.
you try? So you actually tried to write something from a woman's point of view, in terms of the
from a
YA.
teenage girl's point of view, and I was like, okay, maybe I can strike some semblance of this, but it's not going to really resonate with me as a writer for this book, because like, I don't know if you have this or not, but I have a lot of ideas like stacked inside of me, and some of them I just have to write first to just get it out of there, just dig it up and get it out of there, so this next thing can come to light or whatever. And for this YA book, I was like, it's gotta be me. It's gotta be, this has to grow from my own experience. This is the first, everyone says the first book that a writer writes is like thinly veiled autobiography. And as this is a YA book, and my first YA book, and Kaya's first YA book as well, I felt like there were a lot of things I wanted to say and just get out there to just put out. And if I wrote it under the veneer of like a young teenage girl, like it wasn't going to quite be what I wanted to say.
That's interesting. Well, I've written like 7 books from a old man's point of view. And so it's been but I was very tight with my own father, and I had worked at a Japanese American newspaper and interviewed all these people of a certain age. So it was like, so my alter self is like a older man, which is really weird. But yeah, so I find that kind of interesting. Anything else you want to talk about, Ed? If people have more questions, please post them. Oh, what are you working? So what's going on right now?
Right
you
now,
working on anything?
I'm always working.
On another book?
Yeah. I mean, my writing process is to always work on 2 books at a time. So
explain that a little more. Elaborate.
It's kind of like, to me, it feels like I'm using like my whole brain, like I'm definitely more proactive about one book more than the other. Maybe like one of them's a vestigial twin of the book that I'm working on, but I just like having 2 different files to work from, because I'll just write and write and write. And then I'll just think, wait a second, I just thought of something to resolve something in the other book or to bring up in the other book.
Wow.
And I feel like that's something we all encounter as writers. Like while we're working on one thing, we'll get an idea for something else. And not having a place for that to go, it can like impede what we're working on. So instead, I can just like, the next day, just like jump into the other manuscript and get out what I needed to. I've also produced like a whole bunch of short stories in this manner for like shorter form kind of things that occur to me while I'm working on a longer thing. But of course, I'm working on another Type A mystery. That's going to be ongoing until Jingnan or I die. Maybe this book. And then the other is like this weird book that I like a lot that nobody else in the world may ever see, but I like it a lot.
Good. It's not horror though?
No, it's not.
What you were saying about the ability to work on a couple things at the same time, I kind of think your journalism experience kind of helps heighten that or makes you more able to do that, because you're probably working on multiple, stories for your paper. Well, do you call it a paper? Your news service at the same time, right? And I was an editor, so and former reporter too. So I had to focus on what I was going to write for that day's paper, but also this longer investigative thing. And then maybe 3 months from now, the holiday, so I think I just had become accustomed to holding a lot of different things in my brain. And I'm wondering if maybe your journalism training has kind of equipped you to do the same.
It's definitely given me a lot of, in terms of meeting deadlines or being productive. Because there is that writer thing of like staring at this like blank Microsoft Word page. But, in the newsroom, it's like, hey, it's 3:00. Your column about bonds today is like doing 5 minutes. We don't get this thing out, our syndication partners are going to complain. So it's like, not even do or die. It's just like you got to do. So a discipline. It is a discipline.
Brigitte, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked, have you considered writing your life story, a memoir perhaps?
Never. Never considered it.
Maybe you're doing it through your novels in a weird way.
Maybe, but then it's all lies.
Because I think I do that with my novels. Even if I'm writing about a character that's so different than me.
It's really you.
Well, I think I weave in, there might have been something I experienced, myself, but I kind of weave it in. It might be different, might be a different outcome, but kind of remnants of it are kind of like woven into it. I know one time, for instance, I was friends with another Japanese American family in my town of South Pasadena, and they stayed at nice hotels. Like they would take me on we went camping and that was our vacation, was camping, so I got to go in nicer hotels, and then they went on the AAA. You know how they rate the different hotels with diamonds, like 2 diamonds, 3 diamonds, and I think it had to be at least 3 diamonds. So it was like so exciting for me. But I think that one time we went in, I don't know, I think there was some kind of service, that were denied to us because of our ethnicity. I don't know. There was some kind of blow up, and it made a big influence on me because we didn't go to many restaurants. I didn't go to many restaurants growing up. So that experience I kind of wrote from, one of in my first book, Summer of the Big Bocce. Moss's best friend is this big Nisei guy at Tug, and he didn't get service, so he made a big fuss, So that's what I mean. These weird things kind of do, in a sense, kind of come into play. And when I was interviewing Michael Connolly, he kind of does the same thing. Like his daughter, the character's daughter's going to Chapman University. His own daughter's going to Chapman University. So in this weird way, I think, there's little bits, like little footprints, fingerprints too. Benjamin asks, Ed, did you spend much time in New York Chinatown growing up?
Oh, well, we come in for like groceries and for like specific ceremonies and stuff. I remember it's okay. There's an arcade in Chinatown at the southern end of Mott. Now it's called Chinatown Fair. It might have been the same name in the 70s, but they used to have, besides games, they used to have these 2 chicken machines that had live chickens. And one was you could play tic-tac-toe against the chicken. If you won, you got a fortune cookie. If the chicken won, they got some birdseed. But the chicken would always win. The chicken always knew what to peck. And I remember I got up on my toes and I saw that behind the chicken's thinking booth, there was like a red light that showed the chicken what to peck. And because of a red filter, the player couldn't see that this chicken had this advantage. And another one was, the other live chicken thing was this chicken dance thing. Like you put in a quarter and this metal plate starts spinning and this chicken comes out and starts trying to stay on 2 feet on the spinning metal disc, and then it would get fed at the end. So these were the things that I would check out while my parents had like stuff to do in Chinatown. I also remember one time, it wasn't exactly a funeral, but it was like a commemoration event for someone who had passed away, and so we went up to this this level in this this walk up that had like a number of Buddhist monks in order to memorialize this person. And there were probably about 100 people at this vegetarian banquet, and I bit into something and it felt like a bone, and like it just went right into the roof of my mouth. And I pulled this thing out and I said, "Hey, I thought this was vegetarian. I got a bone." And this monk came over and he was like, "Ah, it's a toothpick." And then he said to my mother, he said, "This boy is going to be really lucky."
Whoa.
Yeah.
And it came
Well,
true.
instead of us suing them for getting a toothpick in my food, we got a soothsayer.
Before I ask the final question, I want to just remind everyone that you can purchase this beautiful book that will just lighten your day from Vroman. You could just press that button down there that says purchase, and anyone who gets this book and is willing to share their email with Ed will get a signed manuscript page, right?
Well, just work it out with Vromans at the
Well,
time you
yeah.
place your order.
Yeah.
Just say you do want me to send you. I have a stack of printed out pages from an earlier draft of David Tung, and I'm willing to sign a page, and mail it to you if you buy your book from Vromans. But
And
you can handle that with Vromans in the comment section or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So the final question is, this is from Willow Woo, how did you get into writing? Do you have any writing advice to share? And that's our last question.
Okay. I've always wanted to write. I've wanted to write back when I was learning how to write. I just always knew I was going to write. It's something that's really held me together, I think, just to really know what I wanted to do early on. And that said, the hardest thing about writing is actually writing. You have to be willing to trim back on things in order to give yourself the time and the space and the mental space in order to write. This will include, cutting back on time with loved ones and fun things to do in order to write at home. And half of writing is reading, so you should read as much as you can. Try to extinguish your curiosity, which is something you'll never really be able to do, especially if you're a writer. Engage yourself in as many writing events as possible, such as this one. I'm sure there are so many Zoom literary things happening right now. I just can't get my mind and the time zones correct. So now is a great time to write, believe it or not, because you ain't going nowhere, and that's a wonderful thing too. Let's see. I don't believe in like rituals. Try to stay away from rituals, like thinking like, oh, I need to have like this drink or like this snack next to me, or else it's not going to be right. And it has to be this time. Try to destroy all your rituals and make yourself able to write whenever you can, anywhere you can, and rather desperately. I had a whole another round of destroying my preset settings when we had our kid, 7 years ago. I mean, that was a whole new thing. But as a writer, you're the one who spells out what happens on the page. You are a creator, and you can create amazing things. And let's see. Oh, most importantly, believe in yourself. I mean, we always talk about like suspending the disbelief of a reader, but like you need to suspend your own disbelief. Like really, really believe in what you do. When you believe in yourself, it's something that no one else can give you but no one else can take it away either. So always believe in yourself, always write, always read.
So I think that concludes our section. Yes.
That was a great response to that one.
Okay,
I really appreciated that.
cool.
But yeah, we're about out of time, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Ed and Naomi, thank you both so much for joining us tonight and having such a thoughtful and thought-provoking discussion. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Again, if you'd like to purchase Ed's book, you can click that green button towards the bottom, and we'll figure out how to send you signed copies of the pages from the manuscript. So just bear with us while we do that. But with that all out of the way, thank you all so much. And Ed, Naomi, I hope you both have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, everyone who asked
Bye.
questions.